Hi guys, and welcome to this theory related video where we are going to be looking at a special condition and selection structure which is either called switch case or select case depending on which programming language you're using. Now you need to be aware that this exists for your GCSE, but it's not a structure offered by Python, so we won't be doing any examples of this in Python programming. So the objectives of this video are for you to understand how other programming languages use the switch case or select case statement for condition and selection, and to appreciate the Python equivalent of the switch case statement because Python doesn't have one of these structures available to you. Okay, as always guys, the Python monster resources are there for you to use should you wish to do so. We have the booklets and videos. You may also find those useful for revision as well. Okay guys, let's jump in at the deep end, and you will see on the slide is an example of an extract of code written in Visual Basic. Out of all the languages that have the switch case or select case structure, I've chosen Visual Basic because it's the one that most closely resembles pseudocode for you guys. Okay, so it's not difficult as a structure to understand, but Visual Basic just makes life a little bit easier compared to something like Java, for example. So let's have a look at the contents of the blue box is essentially where it's all happening. So let's have a look at this in a little bit more detail, and you will notice straight away that in this structure here there are no if statements. And one of the reasons why people like switch case and select case is because it's slightly quicker to write because there are no repeated if or elif statements. So what we have here at the top, can I change the color? I'm feeling quite ambitious in this video. Let's see if we can do that. You'll see at the top here, oh my word, okay, sorry guys, you have to put up with the green. We have assigned a variable with the value of uppercase B, which you've seen done many times in Python, exactly the same thing. I am going to have to change that color, I'm sorry, not even I can put up with the hideous green, so let's try something else. Okay, and you will see here that underneath it says select grade. So that's a way of saying to Visual Basic, I'm not going to put in if grade equals all of the time, because we're going to be working just with the value assigned to grade. Okay, so it's a bit like a shortcut. Once that's been put in place, Visual Basic knows that we are comparing everything afterwards with the value that's been assigned to the variable grade, and we don't need to keep saying if all of the time. Okay, so the case here, you can see all of these have a case. Case is basically a way of saying, is it the case that the value assigned to grade is A, or is it the case that it's been assigned B or C? So this here, guys, is the equivalent in Visual Basic of saying B or C. Is it case D or is it case F? Okay, so just like a collection of if, elif, else statements in Python, okay, the language, or the compiler, we should more strictly say, or the interpreter, will go through the list until it finds a case where an evaluation is equal to true, which happens to be here. Okay, because our variable grade has been assigned B, and you can see that in evaluating the question, is it the case that grade is B or C? Yes it is, that's true. So of course this line of code and anything directly underneath it will be executed, in which case, exactly as it is in Python, there is no point in investigating any of these because a true condition has been found. Okay, so after that bit has been evaluated as true, this line of code has been executed. As far as Visual Basic is concerned, the rest of this doesn't need to be passed through, and it will essentially come out of the structure. Oops, we don't want a line there, we want one of my boxes. It will come out of the structure and then it will just carry on executing the rest of the code in sequence. So what you'll end up with, of course, is this. So here's our first print statement. Okay, first print statement says console.writeLine, so that's VB's way of saying print well done. Okay, so there's well done there. All right, and then when it's finished doing its evaluations, once the true has been found, okay, it comes out of the structure, follows the next area of code in sequence, which is here. Okay, to print your grade is, and of course that will be B, which is here. Okay, and in fact a set of Python if, elif, else statements will do exactly the same thing and behave in exactly the same way. It's just written slightly different. And in a second I'm going to put up the Python equivalent of this select case structure. Okay, so let's just get rid of all of these boxes. Now what you will notice, of course, is down here we have the equivalent of what you have seen in Python in previous videos, which is the sort of default or catch-all, which it says case else. So that is the equivalent of a Python else statement at the bottom of lots of comparisons, which basically say if none of these have been evaluated as true, then by default, or as a sort of catch-all, execute this remaining line at the bottom. Okay, case else. So if none of these are true, okay, then this one is the one that gets executed and it says invalid grade. Okay, so I think that's probably a diplomatic way of saying this person got an E or below. It says invalid grade. It will say invalid grade, and then of course once it's evaluated that, just like before, okay, it will follow the sequence of code and it will come out of the structure and just carry on with the lines of code that are in sequence in the program. Okay, so it will say invalid grade followed by the actual grade. So this particular syntax in Visual Basic uses select and case, and you can see the two keywords there. Other programming languages use switch and case, exactly the same type of structure, does and behaves in exactly the same type of way. It's just that for whatever reason the word select has been changed for the word switch. Okay, and that's why we tend to use the expression switch or select case at the top to cater for both of those types of syntax. Okay, so let's have a look at the Python equivalent, which is here. In a minute I will put these side by side so that you can compare them. Now this I ran through PyCharm. It does actually work. It gives exactly the same output as our Visual Basic version using its particular structure, but all we do in Python to recreate the equivalent of the switch or select case statement is we essentially put together a series of if and elif clauses, which you've seen in a previous video. And you can see actually the only difference really between the two is the fact that we have the repeated if and elif. Okay, let me put these two side by side because that will make it a little bit easier to compare. Just to make a note, guys, that the output is exactly the same as it was with Visual Basic. Okay, so let's put these two side by side. So you can see in terms of a comparison of line by line, there really isn't a great deal of difference between the two. The biggest difference, of course, is that in this one I didn't write this code, which is why we have a spelling mistake once again in this version where it says emd if block, because I can't spell end apparently. But in terms of size of code, there really isn't a great deal of difference. It's more or less exactly the same. It's just that we have a little bit more, I guess, repeated stuff in the Python version. Although having said that, we are continually repeating the word case. So I guess it's pros and cons really. However, I did want to show you something which is very different between the two, and it sort of takes us back to a point which I've made on a couple of occasions in previous videos as well, and it's the special way in which Python enforces the colon and the indentation. So whilst we've got these two chunks of code from different programming languages together, I will abuse this by just enforcing this idea of how Python works differently from other programming languages. So let's just get rid of these. Okay, now you will see here in Visual Basic we have two really important key phrases. At the top, select grade, and at the bottom here we have end select. Now you will see in other programming languages the keyword end is always present in all cases where there is some type of conditional block of code, like for example a basic if else statement in Visual Basic will have exactly the same thing. Now these two phrases are significant because everything in between, okay, is what Visual Basic needs to include as a single block, and the compiler, the Visual Basic compiler, relies on end select as a specific line of code that you put in to tell the compiler where the structure starts and stops. Oops. Okay, so by virtue of those two phrases in the yellow boxes, okay, Visual Basic knows that your block of code sits there. Okay, now you will notice, okay, apart from my typo, we don't have the equivalent of an end select in Python. In fact, we don't even have a header either. And the way that Python caters for that is by enforcing the colon and the indentation. Okay, now as long as you get the indentation correct, okay, when you come to the first line of code which is outside your block, well, okay, this is because I'm getting carried away with lines. When you come to the first line of code outside the block, Python will only recognize that as not being part of the structure because you have not put, okay, the 4-space indentation in. And this is one of the reasons why Python is so strict about indentation. It's because the indentation is being used to replace what traditional programming languages have always used, which is a header and a footer formally programmed into the language, okay, to mark the top and the bottom of a related program structure or a block. Okay, so that's just an aside, but I thought as the two examples of the same type of thing are next door to each other, two different languages, it's a good way to explore those two concepts. Okay guys, so for this video, that's all I wanted to address really. There's no coding because we can't do an example, and I think because we have looked at lots of elif statements in previous videos, I don't think there's any point in putting up a coding example because I've done that already in some of the previous videos. Now in this series of videos, this topic on condition and selection, there is one more video in this series where we're going to look at bitwise operators. Bitwise operators are actually quite advanced. It's not something you will come across until the end of year 10, beginning of year 11. So if you've been following the videos in logical order, okay, by virtue of video number, so I think this is video number 10. Video number 11 is not going to be the bitwise operators. Bitwise operators is going to come a lot later on, okay, in the logical flow of the videos. What we're going to do now is we're going to move across and we're going to look at Python iteration and loops. Then we will probably have a look at Python collections and creating functions. So we will be coming back to this topic to look at bitwise operators a lot later on. I just wanted to make that point in case you got confused as to why there is a video remaining in this sort of playlist but doesn't seem to get used until much later on. Okay guys, so if you're following the videos in sequence, I will see you in the next one, which is where we're looking at iteration and loops. I will see you later.